Nigeria has a population of over 200 million people, but only 35% of its population own their own homes. The high property prices and limited access to mortgages makes home ownership in Nigeria unaffordable. Also, first-time buyers in this market struggle to climb the property ladder.
So as a first-time buyer, what is stopping me from buying my property is the increase in the prices of property. I moved with a friend towards Lekki area to get a property to buy. Luckily for us, we found one fantastic property. We liked it, a 4-bedroom. We asked for the price and it was about 200 to 300 million naira. Then we checked somewhere else and it was about same price. Then we said, okay, let's come to the mainland to see if we can get affordable or cheaper properties. Then we got to areas like Yaba and we saw a 3-bedroom going for 100 million naira. It's really a struggle to save up that amount of money and have it in your account, then move and send it to just like that, 100 million naira. It's a struggle.
The limitation of first-time buyers in this market is not the only problem. There are also high numbers of collapsed buildings and a limited number of home constructions, adding to housing shortages experienced in Nigeria. The unsatisfactory land registration system affecting the various land titles and a slow legal system, which is unhelpful to landlords trying to evict their tenants, also exposes the inadequacies of this market. Welcome to another episode where we take a critical look at the state of the Nigerian housing market. The Nigerian property market is characterized by high property price, high rent, and a limited access to mortgage. The complexity of the buying process and the various types of title to land and the expensive nature of registration is enough to test the resolve of a patient man. Then there is the high number of building collapse and the unsatisfactory landlord and tenant laws in the labyrinth of a slow judicial system, all effectively puts this market in a bad light. So the big question is this: is the Nigerian property market fit for purpose? The character of the Nigerian property market is such that it fails to cater for those in need. First-time buyers are often prevented from climbing the property ladder due to high property prices and lack of funding. And the inadequate supply of housing is causing property prices to rise.
So as a first-time buyer, what is stopping me from buying my property is the increase in the prices of property. So I moved with a friend towards Lekki area to get a property to buy, and we found one. Luckily for us, we found one fantastic property. We liked it, a 4-bedroom. We asked for the price and it was about 200 to 300 million naira. Then we checked somewhere else and it was about same price. Then we said, okay, let's come to the mainland to see if we can get affordable or cheaper properties. Then we got to areas like Yaba and we saw a 3-bedroom going for 100 million naira. It's really a struggle to save up that amount of money and have it in your account, then move and send it to just like that, 100 million naira. It's a struggle. And that brings me to say that there is poor structure in property management, because we had to go to several banks to talk about mortgage, if you can get mortgage so as to pay up and all of that. And sadly, we couldn't get anyone. We couldn't get anyone. Now, to now look into the income, how much is the minimum wage for a worker in Nigeria? How much is the minimum wage? If you save up, of course, you have to put aside your food, clothes, shelter, the money for your rent. So if each person, you can keep out, like, let's say 60% for his rent, how much will be left? So using my own income, now, if I put aside like 50% or 60% for my rent, how much will be left for me to save for property? Meanwhile, I still have to take care of myself and family. So it's really a struggle owning the property in Nigeria right now.
The Nigerian mortgage market is not fully developed and is therefore unable to provide sustainable funding for those who requires it.
I've also tried to use the mortgage to buy property, and it's sad that each time I attempt it, there are obstacles. So several banks you go to turn you down because it is not a structure. It all boils down to structure. So if the country has mortgage as a part of its system, then it should be something I can easily access. So I mentioned Rwanda. It means that they have mortgage as part of their system, that every citizen can access it. So for me to have obstacle accessing mortgage, it means that there has to be a change in the structure. There has to be a redefinition of what the economy represents. And also, it is a fundamental right for me to own a property. It is supposed to be. So let's take Rwanda, for example. They have a mortgage plan for first-time buyer. So if an African country like Rwanda can have that, it means that there's a structure put in place for property. So how much more giant of Africa, Nigeria? That shows that there is no proper structure put in place. They don't consider housing as a fundamental human right. Food, clothes, shelter. Shelter means that I should have a roof over my head, and there should be a stability for me. So we will need to look into that to balance the economy.
To address this problem, the Nigerian government created the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Corporation.
Our primary role is to provide liquidity into the housing market, especially on the demand side. Before the advent of NMRC, there was that asset liability mismatch. People had short-term funding to give out long-term loans. So we have come into the market to bridge that gap so that there's long-term funding to give out long-term loans. So we have solved that problem of asset mismatch. So essentially, we intermediate between the debt capital market and the financial markets. We serve as the go-between that borrow long-term funding from the capital markets in Nigeria, and we only lend to banks who now give it out as mortgages.
The Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Corporation has been unable to influence the mortgage market. How come in Nigeria, commercial banks are very slow to give out mortgages?
They can get funding from us because we have funding. We have access to the pension fund, which is in the trillions. It's huge. And then commercial banks can get money from us. But we now realize that that's just one problem. Commercial banks are now saying, yes, we want to give out mortgages, but titles don't come out on time. Titles are expensive, and then there is double registration. The lender transfers the title to them, it has to transfer to us, and things like that, So you have a lot of costs. If you look at in some states, and this depends on states. In some states, you can pay as much as 15% of the cost of a house in title registration. So that shows you how huge it is. So it's not as if the commercial banks don't want to go into mortgages, but they're saying the process is just too cumbersome.
In Nigeria, the size of the mortgage market is very small compared to the situation in South Africa. Let's move me now to the size of the mortgage market, because we've talked about the buy-to-let market and we've talked about first-time buyers. And this combination of both defines the size of the mortgage. So what's the size of the Nigerian mortgage market?
It is abysmally low.
It is, isn't it?
It is abysmally low. And unfortunately, the data is fragmented, so you can get some from the central bank or majority from the central bank, and it's here and there. But the general assumption is about 1% of our GDP. So at about 450 billion, we're talking about $4.5 billion, which is about 1.8 trillion. It's a very
small. The limitation of this market is clear for everyone to see. In a nutshell, the underdeveloped mortgage market has strangled the buy-to-let market in Nigeria. The inadequacy of the mortgage market is not the only problem. The high number of collapsed buildings in the country is also damaging the image of this market. Between 1974 to 2022, about 541 buildings have collapsed with over 1,200 deaths.
We have so many causes of building collapse. First of all, let's say the materials used for construction. Okay, many a times you can use a standard material, but the mode at which you use them is wrong. For example, your cement. We have different types of cement. You don't mix cement, you use just one particular type of cement for your construction. And then you have to make sure the cement are not expired. Then while mixing too, whether you want to cast, after mixing, you have to make sure you use that cement immediately. Not wait after 10 minutes or after 30 minutes, because we have certain time. So once you mix your concrete and you don't use immediately, it's failing. The reinforcement we use, this is the iron rod. Before you use any iron rods, we have standards. So you have to carry all the iron rods samples for test. You have to test. So it is when you test, you determine the strength. If it passes, then you use. If it fails, you don't use. You understand? So you don't compromise on any of these materials. The water you use for mixing has to be drinkable water. Don't just use any other water. If you use salt water for your construction for mixing, it might fail. You understand? It will reduce the quality of your concrete. You have to test for your blocks too. You don't just go on the streets to purchase anyhow block. You have to test. We have machines that test for the strength. We have the strength capacity to which the blocks must be. So you have to test. And there's a manual way we test for blocks too. When you carry the blocks, there are some that are very light. When you carry a very quality block, you will know.
The inadequate protection afforded to investors is also another weakness in this market. When buying Nigerian properties, the legal and conveyancing process can sometimes be cumbersome and complex. In Nigeria, there are different categories of title leading to uncertainty and confusion.
We have different titles, about 5 or so of them. Let me just list them out. We have assent, we have certificate of occupancy, we have deed of assignment, we have deed of gift, we have certificate of court judgment, then we have mortgage, deed of mortgage.
In most countries, landowners only need a single title. This creates certainty when carrying out legal searches to ascertain who owns the land. Nigeria is also known for its slow and cumbersome land registration system, and this is stopping the real estate market from expanding.
And let's assume that you bought a property and you want to register the title and you want to obtain governor's consent. What is required of you is to make an application to the directors of lands. Then you fill in what is called Form 1C. That Form 1C must be filled and signed by both the buyer and the seller. All their particulars and the particulars of the land will be in that Form 1C. Then you have 3 deed of assignment submitted as part of it. You also have the survey plan, the red copy of which must have been lodged, must be part of it. So all of them will be submitted with the necessary payment. Now, the way it's done is that after submitting all this to the directors of lands, and they will ask you to pay charting fee. When you have paid the charting fee, all the document and the application will now be taken to the Office of Surveyor General within the same land bureau. And then the Surveyor General will do the charting. After conducting the charting and everything, the essence of the charting is so clear that the land does not fall under government acquisition.
Right.
So after the Surveyor General has done that, then the Surveyor General will send the document back to the land bureau where the stamp duty will be paid, the governor's consent will be obtained. Governor consent, of course, most of the time governor doesn't sign the document himself. The governor may have to delegate to a commissioner who will sign
on his behalf.
Yes.
And then what happens after that?
Yes, on behalf. Then you take it back to the land for stamp duty. After doing the stamp duty, they now return it to the registrar of title, who will now enter it as part of the record of the bureau.
I see.
And then it's ripe for collection.
For collection.
Yes.
The ineffective land registration system is also another problem with this market. The civil justice system in Nigeria is incredibly slow and unpredictable, and this is hurting the buy-to-let market. A landlord who needs to evict a recalcitrant tenant may spend months, if not years, trying to get his property back.
In terms of delays in the legal system, I wouldn't hold fort for a tenant or tenants, but what we could say that what we found is a situation whereby adjournments may be sought for one reason or the other, which the court really has to make a judgment, make a call whether that reason is reasonable or not. I think maybe that might help, so that adjournments are not sought for flimsy, on the basis of flimsy excuses. And of course, on the landlord side, it's very, very important as well that with legal representation, that the landlord does what he ought to do in terms of service, putting the other side on notice, and having his proof of service in the court file, so that there won't be any excuse or any reason for the tenant to ask for an adjournment and to say, oh, he has not been served. So that is one reason. If a party has not been served, the matter will be adjourned. And then if it's coming up for trial, and the tenant is not ready, the court needs to look into the reason as to why the tenant is not ready. And the court is in a position to determine whether that's a reasonable reason or not. And perhaps if there is a provision for penalty to penalize litigants who waste the time of the court unnecessarily, that may help. But at the moment, there isn't. We do have a cost. We do have costs awarded, but the way costs are awarded is not. It's not to compensate as much, and so perhaps if legal reform looks into that area of awarding significant cost. For example, the cost of cost of counsel for being in court, cost of the landlord for being in court, and all of that. Even for the court, the time of the court is wasted. So by the time you have substantial amount awarded, or litigants are aware that substantial amounts can be awarded, either against them or their counsel, perhaps there will be reluctance to come up with flimsy reasons or excuses.
The inefficiency in the system is dissuading buyers and overseas investors from investing in this market.
Of course, for anyone, whether investors or local businesses, it's a matter of concern, and it affects our decision making. Because when we want to go into a contractual relationship, one of the things we consider is how do we resolve disputes in such a manner as to ensure the efficient running and operation of our business. So it's a very key point that those who administer our justice, we appeal to them that we all need to have it at the forefront of our minds, that what we are doing is very much relevant to the larger society, the economy. It's not only just resolving disputes, but there is a political and an economic objective to it. And it's something that each and every one of us should actually feel responsible for and have a sense of duty, that it actually affects our GDP, it affects the investment inflow into the country, the creation of jobs, it affects enterprise, it affects security, everything. So it's really, really a major area of concern.
The current state of the Nigerian property market is clearly dysfunctional and unsatisfactory and appears not to be fit for purpose. The high property price, the high number of collapsed buildings, limited mortgage and an unhelpful landlord and tenant laws bears testament that something needs to be done to salvage this market. So, what are the solutions? For a start, the state government in the 36 states should build low-cost housing for first-time buyers and to sell these homes under a right-to-buy scheme, just as is done in other countries. Secondly, the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria should be resourced so that it could grant mortgages to first-time buyers, and the ceiling for the loans should be raised to about 35 million naira. Thirdly, the government should scrap the old ways of holding land title and introduce a single title to land. Each title holder should have a land registry unique number for that land. This would allow anyone to check ownership online on the land registry portal. The fees for registration should also be reduced. Registration should be made compulsory, and all unregistered land should be registered for ease of assessment of ownership. In order to curb the spate of building collapse, state government should step up in monitoring building construction. And lastly, the federal government should create a new housing court, primarily to deal with landlord disputes, evictions, landlord and tenant matters, and the like. The new civil procedure rules should be created to introduce time limits for each stage of proceedings, and this would remove delays and uncertainty during litigation. Well, we've now come to the end of this episode. If you've missed out on anything, you could always check us out on our Facebook page and on Instagram. You could also look at our website for more information. Until next time, it's goodbye.
Property Show. The Okri Property Show.
Brought to you by Menvo Homes Limited.
The Okri Property Show.